happy moment for Klal Yisrael is when they get out of Egypt. But this one is right up there because we have 22 years of suffering that Yaakov Avinu couldn't even have Nevuah during that time because he was so sad and grieving for his son, although not true grief, because if Yosef would have been Nifter, true grief passes after about a year, and therefore Yaakov would have been Zoicha to Nevuah much earlier. But the very fact that he couldn't have Nevuah was in a way a sign that Yosef was still alive. But after 22 years of grieving, and Yosef himself had a bit of a rough spin of things, and he finally was given a job in the house of Paro, which was finally a job he could hold down for a while, and he was allowed out of prison to be able to run the country. But still, he must have been grieving on the inside because, aside from his children, he did not have the infrastructure of a Jewish community, which is normally what keeps us going. And he was not only physically divided from his family, he was also emotionally, psychologically, spiritually divided from his family. He didn't know if they would ever be able to patch up the machlokas which had contributed to his being sold into slavery. And he had also received Nevuah, which he felt he had an obligation to orchestrate the events, that his brother should bow down to him and his father should bow down to him. So that's one of the reasons why he strung the whole story along. That he was actually trying to be Mekayim the Nevuah, the Ramban says. But after all was said and done, he couldn't control himself, and perhaps if he had been able to continue the facade a little bit longer, perhaps it would have made a bigger tikkun in the long run. But he couldn't control himself anymore because he heard a story from Yehuda that was very moving, all about the father, and the father lost one son, and it affected him very badly.
When you put the sticker down.
And then if he loses this other son, which is very precious to him, it will probably cause his death. And suddenly Yosef feels he can't control himself any further, and he capitulates and he crumbles, and he, Baruch Hashem, was able to get all of the Egyptians out of the room so as to limit the embarrassment of the brothers. But in the end of the day, he is reunited with his brothers, and Yosef and Binyamin especially, who have been grieving for his lost brother as well, and ultimately with his father. And that meeting of him and his father is probably one of the most emotional moments in Klal Yisrael's history. So in a way, this is one of the most happy parshios, although very few Balei Koreh might not be able to bring out that beauty and that emotion and what's going on between the lines in this parsha. But we who discuss this parsha and we who listen to it in shul should try to remember this is one of the happiest moments in Klal Yisrael's history. The reuniting of a family, the reuniting of Klal Yisrael, and to some extent a foreshadowing of the ultimate geula of Klal Yisrael, where Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David will bring the ultimate coming of the geula. That's why, in a certain sense, the beginning of the parsha is very foreboding, because you have this clash of Yosef and Yehuda, the progenitors of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, coming together, and somehow we don't know how that's going to end. It's going to end in a battle, in bloodshed, which Yehuda was threatening. But if it doesn't resolve one way, he's ready to have it resolved the other way. But yet, again, he breaks through the barrier of the facade of Yosef and the families reunited. And this, in a sense, should give us great hope as well for our own situation. Here we are right before Asara B'Teves, which in a way is a very innocuous fast. First of all, it's the shortest fast of all the fasts of the year. And it's also the very, very first part of the tragedy, right? What ended up happening? Nebuchadnezzar came and made a siege around Jerusalem. A year and a half later, on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, they broke through the wall. And ultimately, on Tisha B'Av, they destroyed the temple. So it happened over a very long period of time, the siege and the different moments of the tragedy. So seemingly the siege was a very small thing. How come that becomes a reason to fast? So we know that the beginning of things is always when Hashem, so to speak, throws the dice, as it were. Lets us see his hand, that things are getting bad. Things are really getting bad. And if you do tshuva right now, you can stave it off. But if you don't, the process has begun. The handwriting on the walls is there to read, to digest, to try to, right? And like Hashem has done in other times, he sends Nevi'im to warn, do tshuva now or else, like by Nineveh he did that. Noach did that with his generation, gave a warning by building the Teva 100 years before the flood, and so on and so forth. Hashem is always giving us that warning. But yet, we don't always heed the warning. So the very biggest tragedy is that we're given a warning and we didn't heed it properly. Right? You could say we were hedonists by not heeding the warning. So, this is a time, every day we read about things happening in the news, or hear about things. A lot of people don't even follow the news, but then somehow or other they hear about things happening, and that's probably the worst, because it means if they heard about it, then it must have been very shocking for it to have reverberated even into past that barrier where they don't even read the news and they still heard about it. But many things are happening every day, every year, and there's no secret that we're surrounded by enemies, right? So we're not surrounded like a siege, but it might as well be a siege, right? On one side we have the Yam, on the other side Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, Sinai, where there's a lot of terrorists running around Sinai as well, Egypt, right? You look on a map, and it's hard to imagine that this one little tiny speck called Israel could survive in the sea of hatred, which is the Arab world, which surrounds us. So you say, well, that was ancient history that they were circled by a siege. No, it's not ancient history. It's modern history. Modern history is not even history. It's our situation today. But we walk around as if everything's normal. Right? It's normal to have the Syrians aiming their guns at us, and Lebanese and the Hezbollah aiming their guns at us, and the Hamas aiming their guns, and everyone's digging tunnels, and every day it used to be they would hide it. They would try to put on a facade of, we're nice people. Now they don't even hide anymore. That we hate you, we want to kill you, you have no right to a Jewish state, you have no right to be here, and we will not stop till we push you into the sea. I remember when I was growing up, that was the big motto that they used to talk about. Right? We will not rest until we push all the Jews into the sea. Right? Sounds like Kriyas Yamsuf. Well, it's not history, right? That's the point. And we know already from all the times we've been told, hopefully we've seen it a bit in our own lives, that the Torah is not just a history book, it's an instruction manual. It's how to live our lives. So, it's not just something that happened many thousands of years ago. Something's happening right now, and Hashem is teaching us right now how to conduct ourselves, how to try to mend the fences, how to try to bring unity. And that's another reason why this parsha is so symbolically important. Because if they really were able to bring unity amongst the brothers and amongst the whole family back then, there is hope that we can do it today. And even if you think about it, it didn't even happen in Israel, it happened in Egypt, where the real unification happened. So it doesn't even need to be in Israel, but we hope today it will be in Israel. But the important thing is not really the location, it's the unity. And in a way, there are meforshim that's why Yosef couldn't control himself anymore. What happened? What did Yehuda say that was so overwhelming? He just went through the story. And Yosef knew the whole story, pretty much. I mean, he wasn't privy to everything that was happening back in Canaan, but he pretty much knew the story. So what was it that broke through that barrier, made Yosef break down? According to the Ramban, he broke his protocol. He was really trying to schlep the whole thing out to get the father to come and he should bow down also, but it didn't work, right? Yes, he finally did bow down, but that's a different story. But the point being that he broke protocol. What? He couldn't control himself. The Torah says numerous times, he went and cried, and he couldn't control himself anymore. Very few times you see in the Torah it says he couldn't control himself, right? Our tzaddikim, that's the whole hallmark of being a tzaddik, is to learn how to control yourself. What do you mean he couldn't control himself? What happened? What was the big thing? What was the big, oh my gosh, I can't control myself anymore, right? Some say it was Yehuda standing up and saying, I'm willing to sacrifice myself for Binyamin's welfare because it would affect our father so grievously. That means what? The B'nai Leah, because Yehuda was the head of B'nai Leah, are standing up for the B'nai Rachel. And not just standing up for them, but sacrificing themselves for their welfare, which is the ultimate sign of unity, right? If I'm willing to do something so, like they used to say, it's one thing what are you willing to live for, but what are you willing to die for, right? If you're willing to die for something, that really shows that you really feel it's so important. I would sacrifice my life. There's very few things that most of us would be willing to sacrifice our life for. It's something that every Jew is supposed to be willing to do. But few of us are probably able to withstand those trials. But every time we say Kriya Shema, we have to think it in our heart. I'm willing to die al Kiddush Hashem. I'd be willing to die for Hashem. If push comes to shove, I would be willing to do it then. If we really think that every time we say Kriya Shema, maybe one day, if it ever comes up, we'll be ready for it. It should never happen, Bezrat Hashem. We should all live and be healthy. Ad mei vesrim v'hala. But so when he saw Yehuda, he said, I'm willing to put my life on the line. I'm willing to become your slave. And he also heard an interesting thing that Yehuda had said to Yaakov, I'm willing to give up my Olam Hazeh and my Olam Haba. Because Reuven also said, let us take Binyamin, and if anything happens, you can kill my own 2 children. That didn't resonate with Yaakov. He wasn't interested in killing grandchildren over this. That's not going to make him feel better. It's not a goy that feels better when he kills someone, right? But what did make him feel good? That Yehuda is so committed to this project that he's willing to even give up his Olam Haba, right? Because what are we really living for? Are we living to get reward in Olam Haba? Is that what we're living for? No, not really. We know we're going to get reward in Olam Haba, and that should make us very happy, but that's not why we're serving Hashem. We're not serving Hashem to get reward. Really serving Hashem with Shema is despite the fact that I'm going to get reward, that has nothing to do with the fact that I would serve Hashem even if I wasn't getting rewarded. Because I love Hashem. And Hashem is so worthy of my service, I want to serve him no matter what. So when Yosef saw that Yehuda has that kind of dedication to the family and to even to Binyamin, that broke his heart. That made him crumble. That made him feel so, what we call in Hebrew, mitragesh, so emotional. He got so emotional because look what Yehuda's willing to give up to save even Binyamin, who's the last of the B'nai Rachel, and for the sake of our father. So that kind of dedication is what's going to bring the final geula. That kind of dedication, feeling connected to each other, feeling like we would do anything for each other, and wanting so much to bring unity amongst the Jewish nation. Any opportunity we have, not speaking badly about people or not letting people speak badly, right? Sometimes we hear people even speaking badly about themselves. A lot of people I know could spend an hour talking badly about themselves. Some people could talk for an hour badly about other people, right? But either way, it's not good, right? They have a whole story about the Chofetz Chaim was on a train, and they're talking this and that and the other with this fellow who didn't realize it was the Chofetz Chaim. And so Chofetz Chaim asked him, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to Radin to see the great tzaddik, right? The Chofetz Chaim." So what did the Chofetz Chaim say? He's not such a big tzaddik. What happened? Anyone know what happened?
The guy yelled at him or slapped him.
The guy slapped him. Punched him, right? Punched him out. Speak against the gadol? That's how most of us should react if you hear someone speaking against the gadol. Agav, that wasn't my main point, but okay. So later on, when they got to the train station, and who was at the train station? All of Radin had come out to greet the gadol. Huge fanfare, huge everything. And the guy's like looking around, and he realized the guy he just slapped is the guy that they're coming to honor. Oh my gosh, I slapped the gadol ador. Right? Imagine how you would feel if you slapped Rebbe Eliashiv Chas v'Sholom, or slapped any other gadol in Chas v'Sholom. Right? You wouldn't be able to live with yourself. So he decided he's going to go and ask for mechila from the Chofetz Chaim. Right? Everyone knows the story. I hope. He eventually came to the Chofetz Chaim and said, "I had no idea when I slapped you. Please forgive me." What did the Chofetz Chaim say to him?
He said that yeah, you were right because I shouldn't have disparaged myself.
That's right. Very good. First of all, he said, "You're right, standing up for the gadol." And he said, "And you're also right because I had no right to disparage myself. A person shouldn't even speak lashon hara about himself." Right? So besides the technical, where do you learn that out from, and what's the pasuk for that? Who knows? But I would say on a very musardika level, because if you're speaking badly about yourself, you're speaking badly about a Jewish person. You don't realize you are also a Jewish person. Like someone once said, I can't help you right now. So a Jew is crying for help. You hear the baby crying in the background. So, well, just say your baby's crying. No, a Jew is crying. We don't think of it that way. A baby's crying. No, it's a Jew crying. A Jew is crying for help. Every Jew is a Jew, no matter what his age, no matter what his background, and even you're a Jew. So why would you speak badly about yourself? You're B'nai Malachim, right? You come from Avram Avinu, from Yitzchak Avinu, from Yaakov Avinu, right? You have tremendous roots and tremendous potential. And you have an neshama that's from a special place in the Kisei, under the Kisei Kavod. Anyhow, so that's what we should be feeling at this time. If we want to really make a tikkun and to fix something before Asar B'Teves comes upon us, and especially if we want Asar B'Teves to be a meaningful fast, like very often people say, have a meaningful fast. Right? Well, what makes a meaningful fast? That it goes fast or that it's meaningful? I think that the emphasis should be on the meaningful part. Well, what makes it meaningful? Anytime there's a tzara, we should do this, right? We have to introspect each person into his own life. What could I make better in my life? What could I do better? And especially, how could I better connect with my fellow Jew? And that will help, because what actually happened on Asar B'Teves when they got surrounded? Why was that such a horrible thing? Besides the fact that it was the seeds that were planted for the eventual korban. That is one thing we said before. If the seeds are planted and we don't take heed, then we're hedonists, right? That's what we said before. That's one problem. There's another problem. the symbol of it. What symbolically happened at that moment? Jerusalem got cut off from the rest of the world. Well, that's probably the biggest korban there could be, because the whole root of the Hatzlacha of the world is to be connected to Jerusalem. How do we daven? Face Jerusalem, face the Kodesh HaKodashim. All the tefillahs go there, and then they go up to Hashem. Right? Jerusalem is the city of God. It is where we live. We cannot let it be cut off from the rest of the world. Yes?
It's the idea of the people hardened their hearts, Jerusalem being the heart of the country, therefore Mida Keneged Mida, God cut off Jerusalem from...
It's probably true. It's probably true.
Physicality.
So what I'm saying is that we have to work on being connected. And I found a beautiful gematria, which I'm starting to put up, Lena, a section on gematria, because Yaakov Shweki made a request that I should put out some gematrias on the parsha. So I've been working on trying to translate some of the gematrias of Rav Yaakov, which is his namesake, Balaturim, on the parsha. One of them was very rewarding this week. Everyone is rewarding, obviously. But one of them where it says that the real thing that may have really broken this barrier broken down the wall, as it were, of Yosef and made him reveal himself to the brothers when he heard Yehuda saying, "V'nafsho kshura b'nafsho," which is the end of the first aliyah. Right? So we've already heard it in Mincha, we heard Monday, Thursday. Nafsho kshura b'nafsho. It's the last thing we heard before the end of Kriyas Torah on those days. And what is that saying? On a certain level, since Yosef had been away, and he was the one son of the Iker wife of Yaakov, and now he's not there, Binyamin is the only one left who represents the love of Rachel, who was the Akeres Abayis, who was the Iker wife. So if he's gone, it'll just completely shatter Yaakov, because their souls are connected through the love of Rachel, through this connection. But the Balaturim lets us in on a secret. It says, Kshura, the word connected, in Gematria equals Torah. And that's because after Yosef had left, and he was the Ben Zekunim, he was the one that Yaakov Avinu had given most of his Chachma to. Rashi says, and where it says Ben Zekunim at the beginning of Vayeshev. And here, Binyamin had replaced him. With Yosef out of the picture, Binyamin had replaced him as the Ben Zekunim in that sense that he now, instead of teaching all of his Torah to Yosef, he was teaching it to Binyamin. So their souls were intimately connected. How? Through Torah. What's the best way to connect to another Yehudi? Through Torah. And because when you connect through Torah, your soul is intimately connected with the other fellow's soul, right? It's one of the few times when you talk with someone that your actual neshama is connected to their neshama, because it's your neshama that's learning Torah, and your neshama is from the Kisei HaKavod when it sees the Torah, which are shemos of Hashem, which are directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the neshama comes out, and that's why Baruch Hashem, I've had the opportunity to see many people come to this yeshiva and their neshama has an aliyah because they're starting to learn more Torah. You can see them becoming a happier person, a more ruchniistic person, a person more considerate of other people. That's what Torah should be doing to us. That it makes us a higher hecher mensch because our neshama is becoming more and more on the surface, as it were, coming out of its hiding place. So that's what connects us when we learn Torah with another person. And that's why it's so important. The Torah that you learn here should not just remain your own personal belonging. That's not what Torah is supposed to be. It's supposed to be shared with other people. So that even if they can't make it to some nafshi to learn, so you sit down for 5 minutes and you learn with them in your shul. So you have a beautiful Devar Torah I learned today about a shomer, about a chatzar, about anything. Whatever you learn here, take it in and think of a way that you could share it with the people around you. It could also be your grandchildren or your children. Of course, at the Shabbos table is a good place to share Torah. But that's what connects people together. That's why two people learning called a chavrusa, also from the word chibur. That's what really connects people together. And that's why we always feel so much happier when we finish learning Torah, and very few other subjects can do that to you. So we should take the lead of this. And I just have one last story to end off with, that I saw a beautiful story someone sent me during Hanukkah, about Alabama, and since one of our great students is from wasn't born there, but spent a long time in Alabama, and I always think about Alabama when I think about this person. So this resonated a lot with me. They said there was a fellow who, after the Shoah, decided he's giving up all of Yiddishkeit. And he changed his name from Vermi Greenberg to I think Aaron Green or something like that. He shortened his name and tried to get on with his life. And he had a little boy. When the boy became bar mitzvah, he took him to the mall, right? That's where you get mauled today, right? Took him to the mall to buy something groovy for his bar mitzvah. So he took him to like the electronics store section, but the son, for some reason, didn't connect with that. He was looking at a store across the way, an antique store. And it turns out his eye was on a certain wooden menorah in that store. And nobody could explain it. He couldn't be convinced. You sure you don't want a computer or a video game or something? No, I want that menorah. It was the strangest thing. And then they got it at home, and the boy is playing with it day and night. Finally, it broke. And of course, he was very upset. So the father said, I'll help you glue it back together. And as he's helping him glue it together, they found a little piece of paper that had been inside the menorah. And that piece of paper said, my name is Greenberg. It was written in Yiddish. And I probably will never get to light this menorah because the Nazi Mimach Shemam will probably never let me light it. But I really wanted to light this. And whoever finds this after the war, please light it and have us in mind. And the man fainted when he read that piece of paper. It revived him. Why did you faint? He said, that letter is from my father who died in the Holocaust.
That's amazing.
And somehow that wooden menorah had gotten to a little antique store in a mall in Alabama, of all places.
Wow.
And that little boy had something in his neshama which said to him, I don't want a video game, I want that menorah.
Yeah.
His nafsho was kushura b'nafsho. Something in his neshama was connected there. And he couldn't even explain it himself. Nobody could, till they found this little note after it broke. Right?
Yeah.
And this is what brought this whole family back to Yiddishkeit.
Amazing.
And I'm sure if we looked them up, we'd probably find out the child became a Rosh Yeshiva or something like that. So
Fantastic.
the moral of the story is
You got it.
go to every antique store and look for every wooden menorah. No.
Excellent.
And your soul should be connected to the Torah and to the next person that you teach it to. And we should realize we're all connected together also through the Torah. And that unity is what we're striving for, and that unity is what we need to re-inject into Klal Yisrael. So we have to learn to speak nicely about each other, and to act nicely towards each other, and to connect to each other through the Torah and through our mitzvahs and through Chesed, and hopefully we'll make a tikkun, and we won't have to fast on Asar B'Tevis because I hate fasting anyways. So if you guys would work on it, then hopefully by
Fast.
Why Alabama? Because Alabama is really Al-Habama.
all right. Well, now that you've